dear ones. You're listening to the What God Is Not podcast with Father Michael O'Loughlin and Mother Natalia.
Hello, listeners. Father Michael. Today is Mother Natalia's episode, and she is going to be talking about some of her frustrations with our society, with our culture. We actually only get to one of them, but I think it is a really good conversation. She talks about how everything, quoting Luke and other places in the gospel, that everything will be brought to light and how we need to live our lives accordingly to that understanding. And that not only will everything be brought to light, but it already is for Christ, who of course sees all things and who we can speak to in secret, but also understands our humanity, but also sees everything that we do. We then get into how those who witness our faith externally, like those of us who wear clerics and those of us who wear habits, those of us who wear crosses, how we are an example of Christ in the world, but we are also an example of the humanity of the Christian and how the Christian can be normal or a attractive member of society as they engage with normal society as well. And also, Mother Natalia says that I'm shaped like a traffic cone. Upside down traffic. Actually, I say I am shaped like an upside down traffic cone, and she laughs. So she didn't say it, but she laughed. She rarely laughs at me, you know that, but she laughs at that. So actually, she laughs a lot at that. If you're a hashtag banter hater, you can skip all the way ahead to 7 minutes and 45 seconds.
Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
We are recording so far ahead. Like, we're never this far ahead.
Well, that means I'm going to go to relax as I'm in the Holy Land and not worry about it.
What do you have? Worried about it?
ADD? Oh.
Would you have worried about it? I think you would have just relaxed and enjoyed it anyways.
Yeah. I mean, you would have worried about it.
Exactly.
You would have had to find people on the street. Hey, do you want to record a random podcast? Hey, Amish person riding by. We need a podcast because Father Michael's on another country not thinking about this at all.
Oh, I thought you meant I would have worried about it like if the roles were reversed, because that's also true.
Oh. I see. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
This is Father Michael. As often as I tease you about this, I really, really admire this in you. Like, I think it's actually just a way in which you're so much holier than me. And I know I've said this 1,000 times, but it's like, it's totally ridiculous, the things that I worry about. And the fact that I allow the things to not let me enjoy the present moment and to encounter God in the present moment. I've done 1,000 episodes on this because I'm so bad at it.
I just want to suggest, though, that it's not holiness, but rather just temperament.
Maybe. That could be true.
I know holiness is a gift. I get that. But this is like a gift this is a gift in another way, because I actually think that, I mean, a lot of people say that to me, even on my old podcast, like Andrea Polito used to say it all, like she would get mad at me. Like mad that was just the way that my brain worked, and it was because she was jealous. I mean, it wasn't like she was mad at me, but she was jealous. But I think that's the hand I've been dealt, and therefore I need to see in it opportunity for conversion and change, and I need to see it at the cross and things like that. That all of y'all, especially the women in my life, are very able and willing to point out to me. I think it's just women pointed out more frequently, like Father Nathan, my assistant, for another 3 weeks. He's pointed it at few things out to me. He's gone
by the time this comes out, right?
He is. He's now the administrator in Las Vegas at Our Lady of Wisdom when this comes out. Is it right? Yeah, I mean, July 1st is his start date.
Oh, this comes out the June 29th.
Okay, so he'll be there. Mm-hmm. He's going there a week ahead. But yeah, so just a couple days before. So, but yeah, so, but I mean, he's like pointed out, he'll like send me reminder texts. Like, I know, you promised you'd do this today. Remember, because I'm sure your brain is on whatever is right in front of you right now, which could be anything from a deep involved project for the eparchy or just the person sitting across from their coffee shop. Mm-hmm. And their pet dog, so it's things like that. So I appreciate people's patience with me in that way.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There are just times when, especially when you and I are together, like, especially that time when I was stuck in LA for a couple of weeks because you got COVID, and we had a lot of time together, even more than usual after you were out of quarantine. And I was just like, there were so many things that I was like, we are just so very different, so very different. And I love that because it keeps our friendship interesting.
One thing that it does do is it does help me remain like happy on the surface a lot.
Yeah.
And deep. But I think the deeper happiness is a different grace of God. But even the surface happiness, which I know has a lot to do with the deeper happiness, but also contributes to it. But still, that's what I do realize, is that a lot of people stress out or worry more of the day than I do.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with you. Actually, we've had this conversation many times where I was stressed because I was sure that someone was upset with me, and they were mad that I had done this thing. And you were like, well, have they told you that they're upset with you? Have they told you that they're mad at you for doing this thing? And I'm like, no, but I know because that's got to be what they're upset about. And you're like, I just don't understand. I just always assume that nobody's upset with me until they say they are. And I'm like, that is not my life. But that's probably the happier way to live.
But, I was sitting with two of my friends. I may have shared a little bit this last time, but two of my friends here in LA are Jamaican. And so I learned all these little Jamaican phrases. So the one I learned most recently was bad mind. And bad mind is like did I share this before?
No.
I don't know. Anyway, bad mind is like if someone is just in a bad mood or thinking or will not forgive somebody, they're resentful, they're doing, like, road rage was the example that we used directly. Like, road rage is just bad mind, which I love that term. It just is so simple, like just bad mind. Like, right now they have bad mind. And so I was telling the story about, and she wouldn't mind me naming her, but Tanya Cangelosi was driving with me, and somebody cut us off, and I was driving, and she's just in the passenger seat, and she starts like getting very mad at them, like arms flailing, like pointing, screaming. And I look up and I see that there's no rearview mirror in the car. So it's just missing. It's an old dumpy car. So I was like, Tanya, like, they can't even see you. Like, they obviously can't hear you. They can't see you because there's no rearview mirror. Like, the only person that you're hurting right now is yourself, and I think that's kind of what that's like. It's like the car in front of us has no rearview mirror, so we get mad, we get resentful. And these two Jamaican friends, Lyric and Rob, like they absolutely. I was telling a story about me getting hurt.
I saw Lyric one time. He came to the parish when you did? He came to the parish when I was FaceTiming you. You were like, this is my new friend, Lyric. Oh, yes. That was on Pascha. Yeah. Yes. He came on Pascha. Yeah, that's right. You did?
Yeah. I was like, what? You weren't here. But anyway, yeah, that makes sense. FaceTiming. But I think that's kind of what it's like when we worry that someone's mad at us, or when we, and again, they'll probably get over it. And if they don't, that's kind of on them. I can't believe actually I'm thinking that way. That didn't used to be the way I was. Like, I would go out of my way to try to make sure somebody liked me, felt good, was going well in life. But anyway, it is true that if you always assume the best, and again, that's not something I've worked on. It's just something that's in my temperament. You assume someone loves you until they say they don't. You assume someone's okay with you until they say they're not. It's like it does have a certain happiness to it that is probably an ignorance is bliss type happiness. But I have not found it to be debilitating yet, and I'm 44 years old. Well, I mean, it certainly is the happier way to live. I'm being serious right now. I know. I'm not trying to like mock or anything like that. But that's actually a really good tie-in to my topic, because there is something about, like, this is your natural temperament, and there's something about just like the times that I'm very frustrated with you because of your temperament. I've learned to kind of look at myself in those times and be like, what's actually frustrating me here? And more often than, I mean, sometimes it's like, Father Michael, you said you're going to do the thing. But other times it's very much
overwhelmingly the majority of the time, it's a reflection on something that's broken in me. And my frustration is just a mirror for me, right? And so it's good for me to experience, because even when this isn't your intention, like you're just living your life, even when it's not your intention, I'm learning something from that, because that's just like God uses all the things. And so what I want to talk about is there are several things that I've been reflecting on recently of things that I'm noticing in our culture, in our society, that I find very frustrating, that I think we Christians can actually learn from and grow in and kind of counteract, I guess. Or maybe not even counteract, but maybe transcend is the better word. So the reason this topic came to mind, I was just going to do a Q&A today, which I'm really sorry for people who have sent in questions, because we haven't had a Q&A episode in a long time. But and then after Q&A, I was like, no, I should do Saint of the Day, because when does this happen? Which I'm not doing a Saint of the Day, spoiler, so sorry everybody. But when does it happen that it's okay? I'm going to tell you. I was about to tell you, actually. You didn't even have to just out yourself. But how frequently does it happen that we have a big saint on the day we're recording and the day it's being released? Because usually when we do Saints of the Day, we kind of pick which one, we're going to if we have a cool saint that day, or there's going to be a cool saint when it comes out. But today is the feast of Saints Constantine and Helena.
Nice.
And then June 29th, when this comes out, is the feast of Saints Peter and Paul.
By the way, I want to publicly apologize to all the non-cool saints. Since Mother said the cool ones. Just because she doesn't think you're cool doesn't mean you're not cool. And I want to affirm you in your coolness, even if it's not generally realized.
Thank you, Father Michael. The saints were feeling very insecure. I tease Mother about that, because when she talks about... and she falls for it every time. Like, she always forgets that this is where I'm going for it with it. But when she talks about how stressful it can be to choose our name, like we, when we're tonsured, I've talked about this before, but we submit 3 names, and we're named after a saint that we'd like to emulate, and we give the reasons why and stuff. But then she can choose one of the 3, or she can choose one that's not on the list. But she talks about like how it's just such a big responsibility, because she wants to make sure she picks the right one. And I always then chime in like, yeah, Mother, because you wouldn't want to pick the saint that would be bad for them to emulate. And she's like, exactly. And then she's like, no, that's not. So anyways, that's basically what I just did. So true story. Okay, so those were, I don't know why I felt the need to say the recordings that I decided to not do, but those were the ones that I decided to not do. And instead, I'm doing this one because I was at an ordination this morning. So shout out to Father Joe Mankhouse. There were a couple other guys ordained as well. He's just the one that I know the best. But at this ordination, there were a few things that kind of added to these reflections I've already been having about frustrations in our culture. And I guess I'd like to give the general disclaimer of, as I share these frustrations, I want everyone to realize that I absolutely participate in these things and I feed into these things. And especially before I lived in the monastery, when I had much greater quote unquote freedom, like the secular kind of freedom, I lived by all of these things. So I'm not trying to say this in a way that's very judgmental or very like finger wagging or anything like that. I give that preface because we had the podcast recently in which I shared that like I found out that people often think that I'm being condescending or I'm being judgmental. And I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. That's just how my voice sounds because because there is no guile. Anyways, so there's that. So the first thing that really struck me was the bishop. So Bishop Malesic is the bishop of the Diocese of Cleveland, and really beautiful man. Just like every time, I'm really struck by his humility every time I encounter him, and he's a very good homilist. Like he has a really good balance, I think, in his homilies of he's engaging, but he's also conveying very real messages. You know, it's not just, you know, some of the most engaging homilies are just like fluff or whatever. And that's not how he preaches. So in his homily, there was this thing that he said about he's giving advice to these newly ordained priests or the priests who are about to be ordained at that point. They're ordained after the homily. And one of the things he says is be careful of like anything that you do. There can be pictures and there can be recordings and there can be videos and they'll be posted online in a second, you know, and a lot of people laughed at this, and I don't know whether or not he meant it to be a joke, but a lot of people laughed at it as like, oh, haha, you know, it's just like anything you do can be recorded these days. And I understood the laughter, but at the same time, I was like, this is very true of, you know, there's just so much more put out there these days on social media and all over the internet that's it's not a natural thing for everyone to have the amount of information about other people that they do, right? And like this has been very weird for me, like since we've started the podcast and things like that. By the way, on our last episode, we forgot to mention that, or a few episodes ago, actually, that it was the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. So that's fun. Yay us. And yay listeners. And anyways, it's just a bizarre thing in our society today that so much of what we do can be known by so many people so quickly, and oftentimes without us even wanting it to be known. And one of the things that I got from that, though, is I was like, you know, as strange as this is and as unnatural as it is, and in many, many ways and at many, many times as unhealthy as this is, it's actually conveying a reality that we often don't acknowledge, which is that none of the things that we do are actually a secret. Mm-hmm. And so it's in some sense breaking this illusion that we can do things that aren't seen. Mm-hmm. And so that was just like something that I realized was this is often a frustration to me that so many people can know so much that they maybe shouldn't. That's just like prying into people's lives. And I do still think that it's like often invasion of privacy and things, but it's also this reminder, it's this tangible manifestation of an invisible reality, that everything that we see, everything that we do is actually seen by someone, by the one, you know, and eventually by everyone. And I think this is the beauty of, I've shared this before as well, but the beauty of praying forgiveness vespers, which is how we start out the Great Fast each year. And everyone at the service asks forgiveness of one another for the ways that we've hurt each other. And this is, for me, the beauty of praying forgiveness vespers with total strangers, which, you know, often happens that at forgiveness vespers, like this just happens to be the first time someone comes to the church and they're like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. Yep. And because it does feel very strange. It feels very awkward to be asking forgiveness from this total stranger. But again, it actually is conveying this truth that every sin I commit harms every other person. And so I've hurt this person, whether they know it or not. And so it's good to ask forgiveness. So I think that this is just one of the ways that it's a reminder that everything that we do is seen. I have a little bit more on that, but if you want to interject anything.
Yeah, I was recalling, I looked it up, Luke 12. Jesus says, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees, that is their hypocrisy. Nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered. Nothing secret that will not become known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light. Whatever you have whispered behind closed doors will be proclaimed from the housetops. This is also why in our mystery of confession, mystery of penance, why again, there's different introductions from the different traditions, but, we say, I confess to Almighty God, one and the Holy Trinity, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Some say all the angels, and to you, Father, my sins. I like that. We're confessing to everybody. And like you said, it affects the entire body of Christ. And I think that's really, really important to understand. And this is why, as we've said before, when we go to confession, we confess our sin to that priest because we hurt that priest, because that priest is part of the body of Christ. So it's actually, when the Bible says to confess our sins to one another, it makes sense. We should especially confess our sins to the one we hurt. And when we do sin, we hurt the entire body of Christ because we are a member of it. And therefore, we have hurt that priest who's also a member of that body of Christ and everybody else. But I do think that I've still yet to see a really good Byzantine examination of conscience. Like, we kind of dig up the focus one is really, really good. Like the Goebel pointed that, Father Nathan Goebel pointed out to me. But I oftentimes think, like, how do we guide people? And I think this is up to spiritual fathers in one sense, to guide people to make a good confession. But I do think that in addition to this general idea that you just said, that we've hurt everybody when we sin, and all of this will be brought to light. I think too, the way that we confess that, the way that we can confess the specifics, is actually, it's helpful to think, about the specific people that I have hurt. Anybody that we have gotten mad at, in road rage, anybody we've gotten mad at for any situation, anybody that we've gossiped about, it's good to confess those things specifically. I had road rage, and I remember this example of this guy in a yellow car who cut me off, and I got mad at them. So my penance is probably going to be, I give penances like this, oriented towards that guy. We'll pray in our Father for that guy, the same thing with gossip. I gossiped about this person. Okay, we'll pray specifically for them as part of your penance. I looked at pornography. Okay, well, pray for anybody. I always say, don't recall images, but pray for anybody involved in that part of our society. What's the word? That not institution. Whatever. I pray for anybody involved in pornography, making it, acting in it, distributing it, looking at it, all these things. So, I'm sorry. Production. Yeah, I'm thinking of something else, what job? What's your career field? I'm in the whatever of
industry.
Of pornography. Industry, thank you. That's what I'm thinking of. Industry. Anybody in the industry. So in other words, it's good to say, I have these general sins of anger, of pride that comes out in gossip. I have, of lust that comes out in pornography use. And it's good when we confess those general things then to say, I actually hurt individuals as well, and to actually recall those to mind in the confession, and then hopefully the priest can give a penance then based upon those individuals. And if not, just take that anyway. Pray for those who you have hurt directly, and for the entire church as well.
Yeah. I think that can just be a reminder for us, though, that because there are certain things that we just wouldn't do if we knew someone was watching, right? And if we knew something was being recorded. And I don't mean, there are of course things that are not bad that you would only do if someone else wasn't watching. My prayer is more intimate when someone else isn't watching, and things like that. So I'm obviously not talking about those things, but there are certain things that I know this isn't okay for me to do, but because no one's watching, I'm going to do it. And so I think it's just a good reminder that these things are all seen. One of the other things that Bishop Malesic said in his homily was, he said that these priests are called to imitate Christ all the time, all the time. And he said, even when you're on vacation and even when it's your day off. And again, not everyone, a lot of people in the church laughed at that. And again, I understand the laughter because, and I'm sure the bishop was saying it to get a chuckle, like, yeah, even when you're on your vacation, but it's also so true. Like, this is why I'm not saying this to be ironic right now, Father Michael, but this is why I very much admire that you are almost always in like priestly attire, either in your...
Because I'm not right now.
Yeah.
But they don't know that.
I'm sorry. But,
I'm the one that said it.
Yeah.
You didn't. They never would have known.
So that wasn't why I'm saying this. Like, it's why
Georgia's scandalized.
It's one of the reasons Georgia, again, for those who don't usually listen, is Father Michael's snake.
She's the only other one in this room right now.
But I can see you and I'm scandalized. I'm not actually scandalized, but my point is, it's one of the reasons I so appreciate that you are almost always wearing either a collar or your cassock or something like that, because it's not just, and I've said this time and time again about like wearing the habit, people, it's a common question of like, are there times I don't wear my habit, or are there times that I wish I wasn't wearing my habit or something? And it's just like, no, not even close, just never. And I realize that sounds crazy because it means that there are times that I'm really tired and I'm like content just zoning out on the plane, but actually this person sees that I'm a nun and so they want to talk to me. But even in those moments, I don't wish I wasn't wearing my habit. And because it's just this opportunity for encounter that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have had. But my point in this is that like the habit is not just, or the collar or whatever it is, it's not just a witness to the other people. It's a reminder to us. It's a reminder to us. Like when I'm out in public and I'm in my habit, it is a constant reminder to me that what I'm doing right now, people see me as the Catholic Church, and they see me oftentimes as Christ. And so what I'm doing right now needs to be representative of that. And it's not always, right? Like, because I sin, but it's just a good reminder. And, I was also moved by this. I'll just finish the thought with this. The bishop also said, like, he commented on how the men, these newly ordained priests, or the priests who at the time were about to be ordained, men who were about to be ordained priests, he was like, you're going to have to smile a lot. And he wasn't joking. Like, he's just like, that's part of it. And I was remembering that in our Typicon, it says that the habit is not only the clothing that we wear, but it's our disposition. It's our smile. It's things like that. And because we're really called to imitate Christ in all of these ways. And there's no time at which I think we're supposed to relax that, there's no time at which, and we are supposed to relax. Of course, we're supposed to rest. We don't have to be preaching all the time. We don't have to be giving spiritual guidance all the time, but we really need to be striving for the rest of our lives to have less and less and less and less time in which we are not acting as Christ, because ideally we're aiming for total union with him and total imitation of him.
Yes, and every human is, and I think that we can also be a witness to that. Like if you're wearing a cross around, a layperson wearing a cross around their neck, there's a girl that showed up to church on Sunday. Saw her out at a ramen place, and she was wearing a big Orthodox cross around her neck because she's an Orthodox catechumen, and she's serving ramen. And it was I thought, man, there's a bravery, and she was like probably 19 years old. There's a bravery to that is beautiful, because it's not only true that people will be looking to us for a positive example of who Jesus is, but they'll be looking and scouring us for an excuse to hate the church more. Mm-hmm. And so anything that we do that they could that they could interpret as wrong or unchristian, many people will be looking for those excuses. I think on the other hand, I hear a lot, and I thank these people for saying that, but they'll say, Father, come over, wear your normal clothes, have a beer, watch football, to take some time off. You don't need to be on all the time. Mm-hmm. And I commend them for saying that. But at the same time, it's what you said. All of us need to be understanding that me coming to watch football and have a beer with you is not.
You can still imitate Jesus in that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's actually part, and that's even part of my priesthood.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I think that the church has, the clericalism in the church has exalted priests to this place where they've had to, but they've not had to, they've been tempted to lead double lives. Mm-hmm. A one life of saying, well, now I'm a priest and now I put on this mask of doing all priestly things, and then I turn that off. And then when I turn that off, but that turning it off, the devil gets in there and leads, tempts towards further sin. So I actually think there is something, I don't know how often it happens with me, where I'll be sitting in the bar having a drink and people will be like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a priest drink, or I've never seen a priest in a bar. It's like, I think we're actually doing a service to the nation to show like my humanity and my priesthood are one. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't change. I don't switch back and forth. And people need to see more nuns and priests being human, and that does not take away from the fact that they're a nun or a priest. Mm-hmm. It just means that nuns and priests are human, and I think that right there can start whittling away at some of the clericalism that clerics feel, but also at some of the clericalism that some people need. I mean, there was this big thing a couple of years ago where, somebody said, a layperson said you should have no priests as friends. Like, in other words, they're supposed to only have priest friends. You're only supposed to have lay people friends. And the priest, in other words, he was putting on a pedestal priests. And I just thought, you're going to fall, like, that's why you're so scandalized. This is somebody on social media. This is why you're so scandalized every time a priest does anything slightly human, because you don't see the two as being together. Mm-hmm. And so I think we can actually, wearing our habits and our clerics, our cassocks out into the world, can actually be a service in multiple ways. We can like bring Christ to the people in a way that they didn't expect, or the way that is good, but we can also bring our humanity to the people. Mm-hmm. and help them to understand that a priest and a nun is also a human being, and the two go together, and we make mistakes and we're striving for holiness, while at the same time having this separated vocation as well, mm-hmm. especially in our celibacy.
Yeah, and that's something that I really like that you made the point of, because I wanted to get to this and it somehow just slipped my mind, which is bad because it's a really important point, that yes, the priests and the nuns and the brothers, like, we should witness to this, but it's what we're all called to. We're all called to imitate Christ at all times. And that's why I point out this concept of, you are always being watched. You are always being seen. Maybe seen is better than watched. And also, I don't mean in mentally unstable sort of way of you're always being watched. I mean, like, God sees all these things. And priest, nun, lay person, consecrated virgin, just, all of us are called to imitate him constantly. And I do like the idea of wearing a crucifix or something for that reason. Or I know people who have a tattoo of the cross or something like that, and that they got that when they were a lay person for the sake of remembering to walk in the way of the cross and remembering that they're a Christian. And there's something to that, and there's something to having good Christian friends to hold you accountable for those things. And I'm not by any means saying that you should only have Christian friends, but I'm saying, like, we do need support in this. And it's why, again, I talked about this before too, but it's why I really appreciate when priests still call each other father. Or I really appreciate that even my family, for the most part, call me Mother Natalia, because, or within the community, like, I never call Mother Gabriella just Gabriella. In fact, that's very weird. Always we use the title, and it's not out of some sort of clericalism that I like that priests call each other father. It's not out of some sort of, it's the fact that like, this is actually a reminder of who you are called to be, you know? And I think that when priests get together and it's just priests and you are just watching football and having a beer or something like that, like that can be good and beautiful and edifying. And I think it's at least a reminder to keep it that way when you're calling each other father. As opposed to just like, okay, I'm taking off the collar right now, and now I don't have to be a priest. You know, it's like, it's everything that you're saying. And again, I want to be very clear. I understand when priests don't do that, and when I understand that side of it too. I'm saying that's what I find beautiful and kind of above and beyond when priests do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I one thing I found related to this as well, that I think there's always a debate going on in people's heads, and this is a good thing in general. When I hang out with my non-religious friends, they in their head, they are just hanging out with Michael because that they don't care that I'm a priest. They do not care. For to them, this is my career, and I think that's one side of their brain. That's the impression I get telling them that. But I am always still a priest in their head. Like they cannot get away from that. And I see that. And I think there's some people feel very honored by that they have a priest who's a friend. But they also, they're also going to behave a little bit differently. And maybe even like intentionally not behave differently. I've certainly had that as well with like, cursing and, marijuana use and things like that, where they kind of force like, oh, I'm gonna say things like, I'm at a party and, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and, hand out edibles at this party. And I'm gonna offer one to Father Michael as if like that's the fun, fair thing to do, whereas they know I'm not going to take it, and things like that. Or there's the cursing. That's probably the biggest one. The cursing where I think they would actually be scandalized if I cursed. I think they would be like, it would feel my peer pressure worked. I got a priest to curse. There'd be kind of that thing. But I also think that there would be something deep down that was kind of a letdown. And I've certainly experienced that before in even before I was a priest. But there is that very interesting balance between the reality of being celibate, being a priest, being a nun, that the world is still reacting to in different ways. Sometimes maliciously, sometimes, they're very honored. And it's an interesting thing. I had an experience I'll share real quick. And one thing I've realized is that when I wear my collar, usually, almost always I wear it open. And that's for various reasons, practical and evangelical and spiritual. But what I realize is that when I walk
I just realized that we've talked about how there are so many things in the liturgy that like started for some sort of practical purpose and a theological reason was later assigned. Yep. And I feel like that's what happened with your collar. Yep. Like it started practical and then later you're like, but here's the theological.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That. It was very practical. My neck is too big for the rest of my body. And so like if I get a black
for your head. Like you also
my head is way too big for the rest of my body, and it kind of amplifies as you go up. So my legs are little chicken legs, and like as you go up to my head, it's like, wow, what's wrong with anyway? You're laughing because it's true. I'm not like being falsely humble. That's absolutely how I look, like an upside down orange cone. But
please keep telling your story.
So I wear my collar open, therefore, because it started out just like, man, these collars. If I get a shirt that fits my neck, the part that goes around my torso is like 3 times too big, and that makes it look even worse. So I just get ones that generally fit my torso and keep the collar open. But then I realized that actually sparks conversation when I'm out in public, because people will ask, "Are you a priest?" And so I acknowledge if I walk into a bar or a restaurant or a grocery store or a coffee shop, there are a lot of people there that will look right at me and not know I'm a priest. Whereas if I had it shut, they would. So I acknowledge that this is the case, and it's actually served my evangelizing purposes very, very well. But I was coming from somewhere last week, and I was in Santa Paula, which is the city where our new church is, and I was wearing my cassock, and I was driving, and I had some time, and I saw a farmer's market. And I was like, oh, local farmer's market. I'm going to go out and buy something to eat and drink and just, let the neighbors see me because they'll probably be seeing a lot more of me. So I get out and I wear my cassock.
Did you bring home flowers for Allie or something?
They didn't have any flowers. I brought home juice, and actually that was it. I guess it was like maybe 10 booths.
Okay.
It was a very tiny Santa Paula thing. But so I walk up and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is so much different than if I was just in my blacks with an open collar. I look, and sure enough, like, everybody's looking, which I totally expected when I walk in. And within a minute, this little kid, probably like 7 years old, runs up and hands me an anti-Catholic tract, like a little little flyer that's, pretty much condemning me to hell and calling me the whore of Babylon. And he just has it and he goes, will you read this? And I look at it, like, within 3 seconds, I realize what it is. And I said, sure, little one. And I put it in my pocket. And then I kept on going about my business, and he ran off. Obviously, a parent sent him up to go do this. Mm-hmm. And then I'm standing there at the booth, and within another minute, I feel this smack on my back. And I turn around, there's just this homeless guy that just like, I don't think it wasn't like I'm mad at it. It was just like I stood out so much that whatever mental illness he was going through, he acknowledged by walk over to me and smacking me on the back, and then just kept on walking. And I was like, okay, I didn't take offense to it, nothing like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting all these. This guy comes up and he gives me hey, is your church doing things to save the planet? And he gives me this flyer about what time to have your water on, what time to have electricity on. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll do this. We're all about ecology and environmentalism, and so thank you for this, and thank you for thinking me. All these, and like every conversation I'm having is and then even like the Mexican group who's making my juice, like, just huge smiles on their face the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was just so beautiful, like both sides. So just wearing a cassock around, I thought, I need to do this more often. But there was, and then I just went and got the juice, and I think there was kind of it was one of those things where I was trying to be normal, have a normal day at a normal farmer's market and get juice like a normal person and get something to eat and something to drink and then go about my day. But that culture just wouldn't accept that. Some people were really honored by it, like the people giving me juice. Other people were very, put off by it or just kind of shocked by it or whatever it was. But it did, I felt very clearly those two things. How am I going to react to a homeless guy smacking me on the back? How am I going to react to a kid handing me an anti-Catholic tract? How am I going to react to, getting all this attention? It was very like, I need to be a priest, but also I need to be very, very human. Mm-hmm. And both of those things, most of our society doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really, really good examples of it. And I've definitely had instances in which people have, in finding out that I'm a nun, have tried very intentionally to provoke me, like either with their language or with, even I had a family member who did this, who just like said everything that they possibly could think of that would be offensive to my morality, basically. And there's something about the lack of reaction that's also very good to give. Yeah. And like I'm not condoning this. I'm not feeding into it, but also like, you're not going to rattle me because of this. And part of that, I think, comes from what you're saying, Father Michael, is very much expressing a confidence in your priesthood and a confidence in your fatherhood. And that identity, knowing our own identity, is how I think that's what makes us able. I don't mean us as in you and me. I mean us as in Christians. Like, if we can actually be confident in our identity, that's how we can live in the world and not of it. And going back to the letter Diognetus, the one that we did an episode on, the letter to Diognetus several episodes ago. This concept of like, these were Christians who were just lay people living in the world and not of it. And it's that confidence and identity that allows us to do this. Because like, you know, you're talking about your secular friends, and quite frankly, I talked about this recently too, but if I know someone is not Catholic, I don't make them call me Mother Natalia. Like I introduce myself as Mother Natalia. But if someone says like, oh, do you prefer Mother Natalia or something like that, then my response typically, if they're not Catholic, is like, if you're comfortable with that, I prefer Mother Natalia. But if they just call me Natalia, like, because they don't know, but in my interactions with them, I know that I am called to mother them. And so that's what I'm desiring to act out of. So I'm acting out of my motherhood, or trying to, even if that's not what they're calling me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So there's something,
and that's what we need to keep in mind. I think, when we who are, you know, representatives of the church by, you know, profession or by ordination or just by baptism, you know, when somebody wears their cross. I mean, I think that's one thing we've forgotten, is that, you know, in the early church, when you got baptized, you got a cross. I mean, you wore the cross, and you wore it every day as a witness to that. There was a reason for that, your baptismal cross. And again, but nowadays a cross is, I think most people, especially like here in LA, would see a cross as, oh, this is a militant, conservative, Republican, evangelical who's also a bigot, and, you know, things like that. Instead of not wearing a cross because of that, which I understand, and maybe there's a time for that, but I also think that would be an opportunity, again, like a priest or a nun sitting in a bar or walking through a farmer's market, to say, look, I'm also human, whereas the cross can say, let me actually begin to change your mind about the mindset of someone who might be wearing a cross.
Yeah. That reminds me of this quote in The Diary of a Russian Priest, the book that I did an episode on a couple episodes ago. There's this is a shout out to the Latins. He says, Father Alexander Elkaninov says, in the text, let him take up his cross and follow me. That's Luke 9:23. In the Latin, there is a word omitted in the Russian translation. Quotidiae, I'm guessing is how it's said, which means daily. So in the Latin, it says, let him take up his cross daily and follow me. And so Father Alexander is just commenting on the thought of bearing one's cross daily. And so I think that's a really good reminder for us, is because we, you know, I think we can often get this idea in our head of, this is what my quote unquote cross is, like this particular illness or this particular habitual sin or this particular whatever, like this is my cross. But my cross is not just this one thing that I'm like called to carry, but in fact, I'm called to pick up my cross and carry it daily. And I think this is a good reminder for, like, maybe that's a prayer for people who do wear a crucifix, you know, when you put it on in the morning or when you see it in the mirror in the morning when you're brushing your teeth or whatever it is, to just remember that, like, today you're called to pick up your cross. And to know that that's seen, which I guess that's my last point on that. There were two other frustrations I have with our culture that I didn't get to, but maybe that's good. Maybe that was going to just offend people and not actually be fruitful. But I'm remembering something that you said a long time ago, Father Michael. I don't remember if it was on the podcast or in direction or what, but you said that there's this, you know, all things hidden will be brought to light. All things will be revealed. And you had commented that you think that as we grow in holiness, we start to see a shift of where we dread that to where we desire that. Because it starts out of like, I'm doing all of these horrible things and I don't want them to be seen. and then it starts to be the things that are hidden are the virtuous deeds that we're doing without anybody knowing. And it's like, I look forward to the day when I know that the Lord sees this. Like, he does see it all the time, but I look forward to the day that like I can really know that with great confidence and receive the reward for that,
And also the rest of the body of Christ will know it. I mean, the people I love and the people I serve without them knowing now, or they don't know how much I love them, or they don't know my intention behind what I'm doing, or, my wife doesn't, she doesn't understand the reasons why I do these things, and she sees them as negative things or as hurtful things, whereas I'm doing them for the right reasons, or, things like, all of those things will come to light, and even the people that we do them for will understand them, and that'll be a really good moment. So yeah, the holier we become, the more we want things to be brought to light, because we do more good things that are hidden rather than bad things that are hidden.
Yeah. Did you have any last minute thoughts before?
No, I think that's, the one thing I've taken from this conversation that I'm going to reflect on a little bit more is how we who wear our Christianity on our sleeve, wear our faith on our sleeve, wear it publicly in whatever way that is, how we are both revealing our transcendent desires, our desire for holiness, and the fact that holiness, and this is what I'm going to take from it, holiness also is an everyday thing. Holiness, just because someone's holy, like the letter to Dignitas that you brought up, it means that they're going to do normal things, and how our society does not expect that. It's so true that I think most of my secular friends, for the first few months that I know them, would think that I'm pro-choice. They would think that I'm pro-gay marriage. They would think, because it's like they don't expect that someone that they know and they have a good laugh with, and someone they begin to like and love, could have such a different ideology than the world, and such a different ideology than them. So there's a ministry in a sense that we do it's not only crazy people that sit in basements and write out vitriolic Facebook posts that believe that life begins at conception, or that God created us in a certain way to have a certain purpose, and we will be fulfilled and joyful in that. And yet the devil is real and attacks us and wounds us, and we sometimes give into those wounds, and sometimes we're merely victims of them, and all the things that come with a real life really lived. And I think that's one of the ministries that we have, is to how normal and attractive being Christian really is to normal people. And hopefully the one day they'll say, I think the reason why I'm attracted to this is because I'm in the image and likeness of God, and that Jesus loves me and died for me and wants to welcome me into eternal life with him. And that does not have to look weird. It does not have to look, there's certain aspects of my life that God has been okay with, and he will be okay with, and I can still find joy in some things in this world while still being a completely faithful Christian.
Yeah. My last thought on this would be, like you're saying, it's an everyday thing. Holiness is something we're called to live out in the everyday moments, and similarly to that, this concept of choosing the good and doing the good, even when you think nobody sees it, I would also encourage people to see these times as times of training and times of practice. Of you're not typically going to be able to respond well in a situation if you haven't been in some sense training for it, right? And so it's like in doing these things when we're on our own, it's good practice for the times when we're not, and vice versa. Like for a lot of people, the greater struggle is when we are alone. And so take your time with others in which you're actively fighting against these sins, as training for the times when you're alone and don't have necessarily that support around. And so I think both can be training for the other. And I think we've all had this experience, where it's like, road rage is actually a really good example of things like this. Like, there are times where I've been so angry with the person who cut me off or something, and I'm just so frustrated and I'm glaring at them. And then all of a sudden they look at me and I'm just like totally disarmed. And I'm like, this is a real person. And oh my gosh, and like, and there's something about just like, oh, I'm seen doing this. And or even worse, if you've ever had that happen and it turns out like this is a friend or this is a friend's mom or something like that. And you're just like so embarrassed and like, okay, well, if you're embarrassed by your reaction because they saw it, then probably there's something just objectively not right with the reaction. And so just keeping these things in mind as you're, I don't know, just trying to grow in self-awareness. That it is seen, and that should be good motivation for us.
Amen.
That's what I got. Okay. Can I close with
Please,
things? Okay.
That works.
I don't remember the order we do things, but I'm going to start by saying the things, and then we'll give our prayer intentions, and then you can give us a blessing. So please check us out on Goodreads, Instagram, Facebook, Father Michael's Twitter at Padre Michael O. You can, it's helpful if you rate and review and say nice things on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on. The only one I know of is that like Apple Podcasts. That's the only one. Can you rate and review on other things?
That's the only one that you can review on.
Okay, but you can rate on other things.
Yeah.
So there's that. And our website is whatgodisnot.com. Our email address is whatgodisnotpodcast@gmail.com. And then Father Michael and I have a nonprofit that supports the hungry, thirsty, naked, ill, imprisoned, etc. from Matthew 25, as well as some other Catholic Christian ministries, and tithing to our eparchies as well. And that is Photina, PHOTina.org is the website. Any other things?
Nope. We're on YouTube. We have a Patreon.
I said YouTube, I think.
I don't think you did.
I think I did. We're going to go listen to the recording.
Someone says it. All right. Cowboy, let us know. He's the one I know. We'll check it out and say something.
Andrew Whaley will support me.
He'll support you whether or not it's true.
Okay, great. Well, then I would like to ask for prayers for, since this is coming out on the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, if you could pray, please, for reunification of all Christians, but especially Catholic and Orthodox. I just always think of Peter and Paul of just like, maybe they didn't like each other so much. But then in the icon of Saints Peter and Paul, they usually have their cheeks up against each other, and it's really cute. And it's like, oh, they're in heaven and they're friends now, and that we can all just be friends. So pray for reunification.
Amen. And I'll ask you to pray for, since this comes out at that time, I normally don't think like that, but I like that you know when this is coming out. So Father Nathan Adams and his wife Allie and their 5 little girls will be about ready to take the reins at Our Lady of Wisdom in Las Vegas. And so please pray for them, and pray for Father Milan, his wife Maria, and their little one, who will be taking the reins in Cincinnati. And please pray for, I guess all the others. I wrote this down. Others at Our Lady of Wisdom. Oh, and other priests. At that point, Father Joel Barst has come to Denver. July 1st is a big a big day for transitions in our eparchy. And Father Brian Escobedo is going to retire to Florida, where he'll be helping out in parishes down there and seeing his family. So lots of good stuff for everybody involved. Just please pray for all of that.
Great. Thanks, Father Michael. Thanks for putting up with doing like 1,000 recordings in a row. It was very good of you.
Yep, I'm happy to. It's and it's necessary, so that's good. I'm glad it didn't all fall on you to record a bunch without me.
I know.
While I'm gone for the entire month of June.
I was going to do that, but I'm really happy that I don't have to. And our listeners will be very happy, because as awkward as I am with you, I would be so much more awkward without you, as they've seen anytime you've put down the headphones. So thank you, and I love you, and I hope you have a great time in the Holy Land. And
thank you.
Love you
too. Thank you, listeners.
Father,
and we have one more that we're recording until before the Holy Land.
One or two, actually.
Yep.
There's at least one.
Two, yeah.
I'm not going to announce what the next one is, just in case it doesn't work out. But it might be one that people end up being really excited about. All right. Father, can you give us a blessing?
Yes. May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May you treasure your role as a witness to the faith, and in that way a martyr, an example of what it means to be one who has faith and one who is striving for purification and union with God, while at the same time allowing the life of a Christian to be attractive to those who are seeking truth and beauty and goodness without even knowing it. May you always be that light, that example, that earthen vessel with which Christ shows forth his love for others. May you be confident and brave in your examples. May you always be proud of your faith and not ashamed of who Christ is. And when you are ashamed, as we all are sometimes, may you find repentance joyful and return to Christ and receive his great gift of forgiveness and of hope and building up. May our Lord bless you and me and Mother in our travels, in our various ministries over this next couple months, and in every way. May he lead us all, even to the salvation of our soul. May the Lord bless all of you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.